All right, good afternoon, and welcome to the Orange County Economic Opportunity Report launch event. Woo! I am Kathleen Otero, Chief Operating Officer at the Orange County Community Foundation, and I am so delighted to see so many friends and partners here. I am glad that we got a break in the rain that we had hoped for, and it is certainly an auspicious day to be hosting this event. Wishing everyone a happy Lunar New Year for those of you who celebrate. And again, thank you all so much for spending the time with us this afternoon. This report has now been several years in the making, and it would not have been possible without the support and vision of OCCF's leadership. Our president, our CEO, Shelley Haas, and our president, Tammy Tumbling. I know, interchangeable. They're sort of like Clark Kent and Superman. They can't be in the same place at the same time. But here today, we have them both. So thank you so much for showing up today. And I'm also thrilled to have so many of our board members here. So thank you to Ana Escobedo Cabral, Ambassador Gary Vasquez, Bob Whalen. We have a couple of other board members who are planning to be here today. So I will say hello to them when they come in. I also want to thank our marketing and communications team, Monica Seeley, Anastasia, Angie, wave out there in the background. Thank you so much for making this an incredible event. And actually, all of our OCCF staff, if you're OCCF family, if you want to raise your hands and wave, thank you so much, OCCF team. We'll be seeing them throughout the day today. All right, let's see if I can figure this out. Advancing the slides. All right. I know. We are on the agenda slide. So for those of you who can see the agenda slide, today's agenda involves providing an overview of the report findings and 6 strategic recommendations to advance economic opportunity in Orange County. We'll host a panel discussion to react to the report, and we're most excited to offer 4 breakout sessions. Hosted by each of our panelists, the breakout sessions will provide an opportunity to hear examples of the great work that we already know is happening in Orange County that aligns with the report findings and recommendations. Now, this report is the culmination of work OCCF has led since 2019 through the Future is Working Workforce Development Initiative, where we have curated partnerships between employers, educational institutions, and nonprofits to create pipelines for middle skills jobs in the areas of healthcare, IT, and advanced manufacturing, among other in-demand sectors. Since 2019, we have awarded $2.8 million to 26 grants supporting 15 collaborative projects that have engaged almost 2,000 participants and led to 350 jobs. Yeah, we can clap for that. We know that's just the beginning, though, and we want to thank all of our partners who are here today who have been grantees that have continued to lead this incredible work in our community, and as well to the funders who have supported us, including the Nicholas Endowment. I don't know if I saw Dan Stetson come in, but he's been a key sponsor and supporter. Now, the successes and challenges that we've seen in this work informed our framing of OCCF's Vision 2030, which is our shared commitment to Orange County's thriving future, where we have articulated, where we have articulated 6 community impact initiatives. And not surprising, economic opportunity is front and center. And today's report is the foundation for the work that we know lies ahead of us. So we invite you to learn more about Vision 2030, our areas of focus, and how you can partner with us along the way. But now on to the focus of today's event, the 2026 Orange County Economic Opportunity Report. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Wallace Walrod. I'll do a little bit of your bio first before I invite you up. Since 1997, perhaps Wallace doesn't need an introduction since we know that he has served as Chief Economic Advisor for the Orange County Business Council. And under his leadership, projects have shaped innovative programs, strategies, and policies in the region. In his role, he also serves as the founding president of the Center for New California, where projects and reports focus on workforce and economic development. Reports published for private industry, government, and philanthropy include the Orange County Community Indicators Report, Workforce Assessment Indicators, and the Orange County Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Dr. Walrod has also served as our OCCF's lead consultant for the Future is Working, our workforce development initiative. And so that slide that I shared earlier with all of the successes and accomplishments would not have been possible without the support, knowledge, and expertise of Dr. Walrod. And now we are so excited to have him driving our future focus in this report. So now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Walrod.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Appreciate the very kind introduction. I do have several thanks to make as well. OCCF, Kathleen, and Monica, and the whole team were amazing sort of thought partners on this. Kathy Boyd with OCDE and her team at OC Pathways provided us with some amazing new information that we had never seen before. Coast Community College District, Stephanie Fager, you'll hear from her later. Sue Parks from OC United Way. Reveille did a great job, I think, with designing the report. And then our workforce development boards, too, were strong partners on this report. So it's really, you'll see at the end, I sort of had this vision for the region coming together. And even in the report itself, you can kind of see that the region came together and all the key partners were sort of at the table. So here's the executive summary. I'm going to be very brief on the slides. It's a very full report, so there's lots in there to grab onto. But I do want to spend a little bit of time at the start talking about the new strategic framework that we used. Healthcare by far is the biggest story here. That's at all sort of parts of the educational spectrum. Healthcare is where jobs currently are and where jobs are going to be growing in the next 10 years. There is a huge opportunity in terms of educational attainment, increasing that. You can see the huge bump for what we call middle skills. And middle skills are something above a high school degree, but not yet a four-year degree. So community colleges primarily offer those. They're associate's degrees, they're certificate programs. We did uncover, and thanks to Kathleen mentioning the importance of this, some really interesting kind of dichotomies within representation in different industries by age, gender, and race and ethnicity. And then finally, there has to be an equity solution that's a core part of what we're going to be doing in terms of our workforce strategy. And you'll see that when you look at where the job opportunities are and where the different representations are of where people are working these days. So this new strategic framework, actually the state came out with the state economic blueprint. It's actually the first economic development plan in my lifetime that the state has done. Governor Newsom, just 2 weeks ago in the next building over at Medtronic, came here and accepted the Orange County plan. You might have seen some news stories on that. As I said, almost next door. But it's not just, we're not just doing a snapshot with this, just an Orange County only report. We're hooking into what's going on at the state level. And oftentimes we don't do that. We go our own way in Orange County. Sometimes that's to our detriment. You know, we're just, I think, maverick kind of county throughout the state. But in this case, this is something we really have to listen to the state, because this is the, and I'll show you the actual graphic here. Before we do that, the state divided our industry sectors into four, which are strengthen, which these are historically strong, established sectors like manufacturing and tourism. Accelerate, those are ones that you'll see that Orange County is a hotbed of these, and these are what we've traditionally thought of as tech. Bet is a much smaller sector, but that's where sort of the industries of the future lie, like AI and robotics and things like that. And then anchor, and these are things that the rest of the economy needs in order to function well. So healthcare and childcare are the two, bless you. Healthcare and childcare are the two good examples of that. So here is from this, I just got this today from the governor's office. This was a bottom-up analysis done by the state, and you'll see why they call it the placemat. Because here is the placemat with all the sectors in it, and you can see them right here. And so we have based this analysis on these sectors. And Orange County is strong in a lot of those. We're not in all of them, but that's what we base the data and labor market analysis on. And that's what these 6 strategies emerged from the data and the data analysis. So those are anchor sector capacity expansion. There's no question when you look at what the numbers tell us, that healthcare, scaling up healthcare training is the lowest hanging fruit, the best ROI, the best return on investment that we can have. We do need to think about reskilling and industry transition. There are some industries that are going through some transitions at this point. Some of those are AI related. You're starting to see that in the labor market. That we need for those bet sectors, especially in the accelerate sectors, high skilled talent innovation. And then we need to scale earn and learn models. And we typically think of apprenticeships as being the core of that, but there are many other options for that. And then we do need, as I said, targeted equity interventions and demographic alignment. And then foundationally, we need to stabilize that childcare sector, because that is the workforce behind the workforce. And so to build that inclusive economy that we all want for the next 10 years in Orange County, we must think of these as the strategies to accomplish that. Okay. So as I said, location quotients are an interesting thing. It tells you how concentrated something is in your area versus the nation. And so if you're at 1, you're exactly equal to the rest of the nation. You can see it's very interesting when you divide the Orange County economy up into those 4 sectors, where we really stand out, where we're a center of excellence, and that's in that accelerate sector. And those are things like aerospace and defense, clean economy, life sciences, software, semiconductors, et cetera. And we're actually going to grow that strength, that competitive advantage by 2035. The other areas stay pretty stable. And the one thing I would say, probably in our numbers, the thing that I think we are underestimating is the growth in the bet sector, but it's very hard at this point because these are just emerging kind of sectors. Here's the current employment, and you can see that strengthen is the #1 job creator. So those are things like tourism, manufacturing. Anchor is second, so over 400,000. And then accelerator bet are much smaller, but those are the ones that have what we call high multiplier effects. So they create lots of other jobs in the economy by creating a job in that one. Okay, and so by educational attainment, here currently, by those 4 sectors, is what you need to get jobs in there. And you can see OCCF is primarily focused on middle skills. It's for the best bang for the buck because 4-year degrees take more time. Middle skill you can usually get within a year or 2 and usually not get too much student debt. But in the 4-year degree, the question I've gotten from several people, is it worth it? You know, and it is worth it. There is that wage premium. There's no question about that. But you can see here where current jobs are. And actually the middle skills, which combines the some college, but you didn't get a degree with the associate's degree, is where the majority, is the sector that has the most in terms of current jobs. And then if you look at job growth over the next 10 years, it's the same thing. Middle skills is going to be about 30,000 new jobs on top of the existing ones that we currently have. And second would be bachelor's degree at about 22,500, and then the high school degree at about 21,000. So that's where the growth is going to occur, and you can see why middle skills are so important. And then here's the wages, and you can see the growth rate on the right-hand side. It's probably no surprise that the area that we are the most specialized in, that accelerate group, is the one that's going to have the highest growth. So that's like life science, aerospace and defense, et cetera. I did mention that we got some incredible data that I've never seen before from Orange County Department of Ed and OC Pathways. I'll roll through these pretty quickly. 48% of high school students in Orange County are enrolled in career technical education pathways. That's a pretty amazing thing to say. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment. 65% of those are in high demand or high wage, so targeting the industries of the future. 58% are from low-income households. So low-income households are, CTE is a tried and true way. And the way Orange County is doing CTE, I think by far is the best in the state. English learners make up 11%, students with disabilities 11%, and then vulnerable youth as well. And they have post-secondary success. 78% transition to 2 to 4 year institutions. They have a significant impact through dual enrollment. And if you haven't heard about dual enrollment, you get college credit for going to high school. So Orange County Department of Ed estimates that you get we've received over $26 million in benefits. That's for families themselves. And then these workforce-ready credentials are a big part of that story as well. Alignment is strongest. What they're doing aligns very well with what the report says on healthcare. 93% of those students who get that CTE pathway training then go on to transition to post-secondary education. We're starting to build that work-based learning component that still has a ways to go. And we talk about that in one of the strategies. And finally, it aligns so well with that middle skill kind of strategy that we're promoting here. So here's sort of the data synthesis. There's going to be a lot of numbers on these pages. I'm not going to go through them all. There's a lot in the report to dig into. But I thought one of the things is to look at, so the jobs, the current jobs on the left-hand side here that's currently what, when you have a high school degree, the kind of jobs that are out there in the workplace that you're well qualified for. And so you can see here right off the bat that overall tourism and healthcare are the biggest job generators, with manufacturing just behind that, and financial. And when you see housing, that's basically what the state is calling what we would typically call construction. They just used a different term. And then you can see the current salary, the job growth, and I put asterisk by manufacturing and financial. Hold that thought in your mind about why I did that till I get to a subsequent slide. And then you can see the growth rate in terms of the wage level. And so high tech, probably pretty obviously has the highest growth rate, but manufacturing actually has the second highest growth rate in terms of compensation going forward. Same thing for middle skills, and this is where healthcare really, the fit between healthcare and middle skills is really a tremendous one. And like I said, that is, to me, the best opportunity. And I have been saying for years when people ask me, what should I tell people coming up through the educational system, what they should go into, it's healthcare. Because even if you're an IT person, they need a lot of healthcare IT people. So healthcare, and we are getting older as a county. You consume more healthcare services as you get older. We've been having some major investments in Orange County in terms of our infrastructure, UCI with its new hospital, City of Hope, et cetera. So healthcare by far is the biggest one. But you can see transportation and logistics, life science and education are growing as well, as is tourism. The issue on tourism is the wage level. And that's why we have some strategies about upskilling those people. And then finally, bachelors, you can see here, probably no surprise either that high tech is the one that's going to grow the most. It's not the most right now. Financial is actually the most. And then healthcare is second in that. And you can see the growth rates there in terms of. And then we have Appendix A, one of my favorite appendices. So there's, in those 4 buckets, there are 15 different sectors. And I don't know if you saw it this closely, but there are a couple where they're in multiple of the buckets. So that would be high tech and the clean economy. They were in both of them. But for each of the 15, we have a appendice that's 5 pages long for each. So it goes into healthcare, the background, where are the opportunities, what is the history of that sector in Orange County. Then it goes into the demographics in that particular industry. Then it goes into, if you're a high school student, if you're looking at high school, how many jobs, what are the wages, what are the top cities, what is the top employer in the last 12 months, what are the top 5 jobs currently, and this is just for high school educational levels, what are the top 5 jobs in 2035, top 5 jobs emerging over the next decade, the top essential skills for that education level, the key educational institutions, and then the most frequent prior job to get into healthcare as a high school graduate, and the most frequent next job after, because it is this idea of a ladder or a pathway. And so then we have those for middle skills as well for the same sector, same exact categories, and then also for bachelor's degrees. So there is a 75-page appendice in there by sector, by education level, about here are really where opportunities are to improve your education, where to get a job, what kind of jobs are being hired for. So I think that's to me was a really crucial part of the report to drill down to that. Now we get into the age, kind of the divergences within industry by workplace. I said to keep in mind manufacturing and financial. And you can see here, those are 2 examples of industries where, and these are Orange County numbers, where the current workforce in those sectors is aging quite rapidly. You can really see it in manufacturing, that between 55 plus, that's about 35% of the workforce is going to retire here very quickly. So even though those had before negative growth rates, in terms of job openings, there are going to be a huge amount of job openings. On the reverse side, you can see the sectors that employ our youngest workers are tourism, childcare, and education, interestingly enough. So just an interesting way of looking at different industries. And then gender distribution, this really surprised me, actually. It takes a lot to surprise me on labor market information after I've been doing it for so long. But look at the divergences by gender in different industries. Just point out, like healthcare, 71% are women and 29% are men. And you can just go down the list there. Some you might imagine why that's the case, but others, yeah, really surprised me. So there are some huge opportunities to bring these numbers closer together. I don't know that we're ever going to get 50-50 in each, and I don't know that we want that, but we need to really make an effort to make sure that all genders consider all industries and have equal access to those. And then race, ethnicity, very similar. There are some real concentrations there. As I said, it's in the report, and we do some analysis on it. I won't go into it specifically right now, but you can see different races and ethnicities have different representation in different sectors. And that does bring up the question in one of the strategies about equal access or equitable access and what you need to do in order to get there. Okay, so we showed earlier at the high level those 6 strategies. We'll drill down into those to conclude. I'll just dive right in. So number 1, this is, I think, the highest priority, is healthcare. We need to scale up capacity at our institutions for healthcare. As I said, we have and are continuing to make tremendous investments in the region in terms of healthcare. And I actually think it's still underserved as a market because as this area grows older, we're going to need more healthcare. Hoag is another example of, I think I just saw in the Business Journal today that they are going to need 1,200 more people. I think UCI was approximately the same number. I don't know the number for City of Hope, but healthcare for sure is what we need to focus on. And especially those middle skill, short-term credentialing for things like medical assistants, and then associate's degrees for like LVNs, and then those sort of stackable credentials. It is an area where you can get into the field, even with a high school degree, and then you can get on this path to a really good career. So here's, for each of these, kind of the goals is to just expand that capacity. And about 17,000 new middle skill jobs, but almost 50,000 new jobs on top of what we already have in the county. And then we do have that great work that Orange County Department of Ed and OC Pathways are doing, where that's one of the most popular degrees to go into. And then there's this transition rate. So once we get students excited about healthcare as a career, and I just have to stop for 1 second. My grandson at his school, starting last week, they started looking at like the body and stuff, and they got them little like lab coats and little stethoscopes. And he's a kid who doesn't always want to go the next day. He could not wait to get back to, it's really his, it's not even preschool yet, we call it his school, but he could not wait to get back there because of that exposure. And I think that's a real good example of the kind of things we need to think about to expose our children to the opportunities out there. As I said, reskilling, there are a lot of industries, and this is obviously not just an Orange County only issue, that are the skill level needed to be sustainable in that industry is rising quite rapidly. And it's a very difficult issue if you're in the existing workforce to have the time or the energy or the money to upskill yourself. But that's something we can't leave people in industries. An example is manufacturing. The skill level in manufacturing is rising quite rapidly. And so we're in danger of a whole workforce that's currently out there working in a really good paying industry of kind of getting left behind as the skills necessary to be competitive in that sector. So we need to really think about that. And then financial services is actually another one where especially I think you can see AI is starting to change the nature of the skills that you need to be competitive or sustainable in that traditional sector. So we need to preserve those high wage jobs in those sectors and the people that are in them by providing these pathways for reskilling. And some of that obviously would be partnerships with employers and with the industry itself. And I know like Stephanie Fager, who's here, has done a lot of work with industry partnerships, and there's starting to be really good payoff for that. So the other thing is, if you're in a particular sector of, say, like manufacturing, there are other sectors that are manufacturers too, like aerospace and defense, that you can transition into. And I'm old enough to remember a time when financial services during the great financial crisis was one of Orange County's biggest areas, especially the subprime mortgage area. We had a lot of employers there. Those people, once those jobs went away, had a very difficult time. And we did, I think the workforce system did some stuff to transition those people, but we need to be proactive here for these people in these particular industries. I will say just a little bit of a call out too, that I'm also old enough to remember when aerospace and defense was much larger in Orange County. And then we had the Berlin Wall fall, the peace dividend, all that kind of stuff. It shrunk quite a bit. I think we were almost close to 100,000 in terms of aerospace and defense, we got down to about 15,000. And that does show the resilience of Orange County, that like our major industry, 85% left, and we still got along okay. But I think there's a real reinvigoration right now going on, and that's primarily because of autonomous systems, autonomous vehicles. Anduril, however you say it, is a company that you can really build an industry cluster around. And when we say industry clusters, it's usually one company or a series of companies that starts, and then people leave that company to go start another company, or there's partnerships. And so I do think this whole area is a huge opportunity for Orange County that we need to make sure that we're preparing people and educating people about. And that's kind of about this. As I said, the BET and Accelerate sectors had lower employment levels, but they have higher multiplier effects. So creating jobs in those and supporting jobs in those is going to be super important. And so that's, if you saw those differences in terms of ethnicity and gender and age, we need to make sure that equitable access for things like AI and robotics are out there. I'm a little bit behind time, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker. So we also built into the report the equity profile that was recently done, and we think that's a good way to kind of look at this. Earn and learn, I wish I had more time to talk about this. Apprenticeships are a huge opportunity. We need to play in that space. The state has really made a big commitment there. We haven't as much taken advantage of that. Kathy Boyd and her team from OC Pathways is changing that, but apprenticeships are one of the best ways. And there's all different flavors of apprenticeships and work-based learning now. If you're interested in that, you should go to their breakout session for sure. And so just scaling what we already are doing, we traditionally think of apprenticeships in like the building trades, but in non-traditional areas, that's the real growth in terms of apprenticeships. And then we need to make sure that another equity thing, in addition to that demographic alignment, is we need to make sure that we address any barriers that students have in order to get the education that they need, because they shouldn't really have to choose between learning and earning, which is sometimes a hard choice for families to make. And so we explore that a lot in the report. CTE is one way, but there are just ensuring equitable access going forward is super important. And so that's barrier removal and opportunity advancement. And finally, childcare, the workforce behind the workforce, is of all the sectors that we looked at, is the one that's under the most pressure, and that's almost exclusively because of the wage level that's being paid in that sector. So we need to think of some very innovative ways of addressing that, and I think that's one where we need to be creative in what we're doing. And First Five is doing some really amazing things in partnership with CIELO and SBDC of training new entrepreneurs to get into that area. But we have a huge gap in terms of there's much more demand than supply, and yet it's a troubled industry mostly because of the wage levels. So childcare is definitely one of the 6 pillars that we've been looking at. And I think with that, we are, I won't go in too much to my final thoughts. You can read about it in the report. But we just need to make sure there's not this widening gap that we see in a lot of industries and a lot of other places. We need collaboration more than ever. And then I think this is the start, hopefully, as well as California Jobs First, of a unified regional vision. And I think we are coming together. Orange County is, a fairly small place. And we can get together in meetings like this and collaborate and think about how to work together. And that's a big part of the panel and the breakout rooms. So with that, I'm done. And I think, do we have time for Q&A? So I would love any Q&A. Thank you very much for your attention. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're lucky that we have Kim Gall here. First Five's done amazing work on this. And then she'll both be on the panel and then in a breakout session too. So I think there's lots of opportunity for that discussion today. Other questions? Yep.
The EV technician program to
Yes.
enrich that sector. We were looking at the clean technology, and the numbers are very promising. And we were looking to have more support from your side and everyone else to have that CTE, workforce development, and employment all under one umbrella. So in case there's any directions or advice from your side, we would really like to have that insight.
Yes, I think that's a case where we do need some targeted investment to catalyze that industry. A lot of the I say governmental support has been pulled back on, obviously. That's probably a part of because we have a fairly dynamic model that calculates these numbers. But that would be a case that the state is obviously still very supportive. When I said earlier that this has kind of been codified into state, and I can't remember the name of the bill, there was an assembly bill that Governor Newsom signed by Buffy Wicks that has to do with the next step of California Jobs First. I think it's AB 940 maybe, is doing basically industrial policy around each of these 15 sectors, which the state has never done before. The first one's going to be quantum computing, but each of those sectors, including the clean economy, is going to have an industrial policy built around it, or policies. And when I said also that this is the way the state is going to invest money, the California Energy Commission, who grants most of the money from the state that goes to that kind of a project, all their money is going to be invested according to that placemat graphic that I showed. And oftentimes, Orange County does not go after those kind of state grants. So I can't remember the name of the particular CEC program. I could try to find it if you give me your card later. But there's like $150 million every year that Orange County just has not taken advantage of that money being there. So yeah, you bet. No, more targeted investment for sure. Yes.
High school and bachelor's and middle schools, it was negative growth. Is that because there's no new jobs projected, but the growth will be from people that are leaving those industries?
Yes, that's exactly right. That was what I tried to do by the asterisk without putting too much verbiage into it, but that's exactly right. And that's especially true for manufacturing. I remember I took a tour of Boeing facility a few years ago. They have some employees that are still working in their late 70s and early 80s at Boeing. So I'm sure that they would like to go out and travel or something like that. If they could find a replacement, I'm sure Boeing would love that. And Boeing is an example of a company that does do tuition reimbursement really, really very generously. Anybody else? I don't see anybody. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, Christina, of course. Yeah.
And so for those that are not, thank you, I don't really need this, but for those that are not deeply aware of that industry, can you give some large scale and middle-sized companies that are represented in Orange County that represent the manufacturing technology area, and give some specific examples of what does that mean, like manufacturing, specifically in terms of the job itself and the industry. I want a little bit more information to give people sort of a wider macro scope of that, if you could, please.
Sure.
Thanks.
I think a really good example is in the medical device area. Applied Medical is because they're a private company, I don't think a lot of people, it's on their radar screen. Excuse me, I think the last time I checked, they have close to 6,000 people in Orange County. And, you know, they make medical device, you know, and they do manufacture that right here. There are a lot of medical device manufacturers, like Edwards too, manufactures right here in Orange County. The defense aerospace industry still has some manufacturing that they do here. Some of that has left. But I think there are also, you know, companies like food manufacturers that are still here. Yeah, Santa Ana, I think, has a number of, in fact, Deborah is probably the best person to ask from the Santa Ana Workforce Development Board, because Santa Ana is really the hub of manufacturing in Orange County. And there are a number of manufacturers are thriving here. Oh, you bet. Yeah, yeah, you bet.
Wallace, last question's back here.
Yes.
Hi, Wallace. My name is Keith Mattea with
Yes.
Big Brothers Big Sisters. Amazon has cut 16,000 jobs based on AI, 10,000 jobs earlier. It's 10% of their workforce.
Yeah.
I know when we've gotten feedback from both our national office and then also from the U.S. Department of Labor, it's like you better be skilling your students up with AI skills. So I was wondering, maybe you could, I know you spoke a little bit about like AI as an industry, but AI seems to be a skill that cuts across all industries. And does these stats like take into account some of those like recent trends in how AI is impacting the workforce?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I love about the state framework that I showed was when you use what's called NAICS codes, or North American Industrial Classification System. That's how industries are classified by the federal government. They are so backward looking. They won't have a category for AI, I bet, for 20 more years. So that's why you need sort of on the ground kind of analysis to figure that out. But you're exactly right. There's no question. I was just talking to somebody earlier about this. AI is transforming the workplace quite rapidly. My daughter-in-law, I don't know if she'd like me to say this, she's a coder at YouTube, and she even uses AI to do 80 to 90% of her coding. And everybody at Google is the same way. And so they're needing less coders and software engineers than they used to. Yeah, I was actually surprised. I think our numbers did pick that up, because I was surprised that tech was not a higher growth industry sector, because I would have said more that way. But when you get down to the granular level that the state blueprint talks about, you really, you start to see that those changes are already starting to occur. And I think it's a question for education. I think that would be, that should be a great topic to talk about. And I know Kathy is actually very much understands the power of AI, and it is, you know, it has transformed some industries. It probably will even more so. Like I tell you, one industry that it hasn't hit yet, and they're probably, I don't know if there's any lawyers in the room. They're not early adopters, that's for sure, but it's got to be transforming that industry quite rapidly, very, very rapidly. But there's no bigger topic right now in terms of making yourself defensible or sustainable out in the workforce that, you know, just saying, no, I'm not going to use AI is like back in like 1980, saying I'm not going to use a computer. I mean, it's sort of, I think, like the same thing. So are we good on time? Thank you, Keith. That was a good question. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Walrod, for that incredible overview, which I promise you, when you click on the QR code and dig into the content of the report, it's a lot. There is a lot of rich, detailed information there about the trajectories of our workforce and opportunities. So at this time, I want to invite our panelists up to the stage, and while they make their way up, just want to reflect on this Orange County Economic Opportunity Report does certainly make one thing clear, that our region's prosperity is not a matter of chance, but a matter of design. And what this report does is it overlays labor market demand with our education and training pipelines, and what emerges is both a challenge and an opportunity. We have strong programs, we have proven outcomes and innovative partnerships, but the gap between our current performance and future demand is where investment, alignment, and imagination matter most. So today's panel, which I'll join in just a second, brings together leaders who sit at critical points in that system to talk not just about what's working, but about what's possible if we design this system intentionally. So I want to welcome Kathy Boyd, Executive Director, Career Education and Workforce Development for the Orange County Department of Education, Stephanie Fager, Project Director at Coast Community College District, Kim Gall, President and CEO, First 5 Orange County, and Sue Parks, President and CEO of Orange County United Way. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. And I will join you now. How should Orange County think differently about childcare, not just as early learning, but as a workforce equity intervention? And what kinds of new models or investments can truly stabilize and professionalize this workforce?
Well, thanks for the question. That's a mouthful, and let me put to side any aspirations that I'm going to solve that problem here today. Childcare has been an ongoing and persistent problem. This is not new to the comment that was made earlier. It is not an Orange County problem. It is a universal problem. And part of it is just systemic. Workforce within the childcare sector actually in many cases lives below the poverty line. So, and there is no structural solve for that right now in the works. There are not more reimbursements coming. There is not a different structure on the edge. There's not a lot of innovation in this field. But what I can tell you is what Orange County has tried to start doing is flipping the script on childcare, talking about it differently. It is impacting our economic viability as a county and as a state. And if we don't start to solve it in a much more aggressive way, it's going to control whether we can grow or not. It is under the Orange County Indicators Report, we know that one of the biggest exports we make is our highly educated, income-earning new families. One of the reasons we're doing that is because they cannot afford to live here and childcare, between our housing and our childcare costs. So what we've been doing is working to try and change our language and our script and really talking about what is the economic impact. We lose over $5 billion in workforce lack of productivity. We lose $500 million in tax revenue. When we start talking like that, you start to get the attention of different people that can persuade the legislature and lawmakers to think differently about the crisis that is childcare. While we know that it keeps women out of the workforce, and we know that probably women can come and try and solve this problem, we need everyone's attention on this issue now. Those of you that have heard me speak again, you also know that I am a fierce early childhood advocate. And the thing we need to be thinking about is if we want a labor force in the next 20 years, we better start investing in early childhood. Because what we know is when we don't give kids positive growth experiences in those first 5 years, they cannot hard work themselves out of that gap. It's impossible. Those trajectories are set. So we as a society have to come up with a different solution. Some of the solutions that we've been thinking about are really changing, again, the script. Childcare is small business. If we want to invest in small business, childcare has to be a sector. Most families choose small family-run childcare within their neighborhood. Those are entrepreneurs. Those are folks we can invest in. So if we could get reimbursement rates changed, we could get more childcare organically in our communities run by women, men too, but that are small business investments. Other things, we talked a little bit about apprenticeship programs. They're great apprenticeship and training programs. The problem is the market is failing us. There is not reimbursement to continue this project. This isn't a lack of interest. This isn't a lack of need. This is a reimbursement issue for our childcare workforce. So lots of idea generation, but until that reimbursement rate is substantively changed, we are not going to solve our way out of this problem. We have to start educating and advocating and getting on the same message about what the problem around childcare really is.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Well, let's pick up where you were just going, I think, in terms of dreaming forward. If this system was truly designed with an equity forward proposition, what is one bold intervention that you believe could fundamentally shift outcomes for families who have historically been locked out of economic opportunity?
Sure. So one data point that I'll leave you with is in Orange County, we serve less than 3% of our infants in subsidized childcare that qualify. So if you had 100 kids that qualified for subsidized childcare, we're serving 3 of them. 97% are doing something else. That should haunt all of us. Because that little kid and that family are making really, really, really hard decisions about where that child goes while their parents are at work. And so one of the bold decision that I would think, is we need to deal with our subsidized childcare. That should be all of our priorities, is to get those kids into subsidized childcare. We need to fix our subsidized childcare program. There's lots of ways to do this. We're seeing fantastic movements in Alameda County, where they have a sales tax. Sonoma County, they've added a sales tax. Santa Cruz County, they added a sugary drink tax. And I know nobody wants to be taxed more. We just don't. I don't. But the current economic system is not going to provide for the reimbursement rates that get our childcare workforce out of poverty and that can solve that subsidized childcare problem. And what we know is that those kids that are put in those unfortunate situations, getting childcare from the neighbor who puts them in a bouncy seat and goes on about their business and makes the $100 that the person can afford, that's our workforce. That's our healthcare. That's our AI coder. That's whomever, right? That's who we are all depending on. And we know if we worry about our mental health crisis, as we do, we know our middle schoolers. That's our mental health crisis, sitting in a bouncy seat with no positive experience, no buffering, no resiliency being built during those hours that parent is at work. So this has to become an everybody issue, and if it doesn't, and if we aren't educated on it and advocating about it, real numbers, real impacts, it's not going to change. So my first big, bold vision is to deal with the subsidized childcare issue.
Great, thank you, Kim. And for anyone interested in digging deeper into the childcare issues, I invite you to sit in with Kim in her breakout session. So Kathy, now, if equity is the goal, data helps us see where we're falling short and where we can act earlier. This report allows us to look across districts and see who is participating in which career pathways. What patterns are you seeing in terms of race, ethnicity, and gender? And where do we need to be more intentional about engaging students in non-traditional high-wage sectors?
Well, first of all, thanks for the question. We have a kind of a unique situation here in Orange County, which Wallace referred to, which is that we started collecting data just a few years ago, by the way. It's really new data, and just in our K-12 system. So in our K-12 system, we have 28 school districts, just the public school districts, and 15 of those serve a secondary audience, which is our middle school and high schoolers. So what you're seeing in the data report is actually just a subset of the actual data. Those numbers are different if we want to start including data from our community colleges and our four-year colleges and the training programs that exist in those. So I want to talk about what we have started, because we're proud of ourselves, but we're just scratching the surface. And as we look from an educational perspective to braid the data gathering among our post-secondary institution as well as our K-12s, I think we'll get an even more accurate picture of how many students are preparing for different fields or sectors in our area. As far as the disparity of numbers that we saw in some of the slides that Wallace shared with us, I didn't memorize the report. I did spend the holiday weekend, though, really looking at it. And I think one of I walked up here going, oh, I wish we all could get a printed report, because I'm of the generation that still likes print. So when you go home, please don't discourage you from really going in and looking at that and actually playing with your own AI, whichever ones you use at home, to start analyzing that report as a think partner in what you care about or what you're invested in. I ended up creating like 10 different visuals to kind of dive down into the report a little bit more, because it's a lot of great information. But I didn't memorize all of it. I know that in our K-12, when we did do the data gathering, I think our Hispanic Latino population was actually the strongest in medical healthcare, which surprised me. But then you look a little deeper and they're not persisting as completers necessary in the pathways. So they may be engaging in a course or two, but are they going all the way through the distance? Maybe not. We still have a problem in our educational systems, and this has a lot to do with developmental issues, especially at the high school level. We know that peer pressure and friends and I'm going to take this because my friends are taking it is still a huge issue. So it's not necessarily a true representation of somebody's career goal, but we still see a huge disparity of certain sexes engaging in certain industry sectors and then not in other industry sectors. So there's a lot that we can do, and I feel like social media is an opportunity to do that. I think there's so many fun ways to go about looking at dispelling some of those stereotypes and myths. There's a lot more to look at when you look at the actual report, but I feel like just having the data is the biggest part that we want to keep looking at. And then how do we start getting this same kind of data between all of our educational institutions? And I'm going to say this because I don't know how many educators are in the room, but when you look at our K-12 system, we are run, if you will, by the California Department of Education. When you look at our post-secondary, for instance, Stephanie, she's run by the community college system. When we look at our Cal State, that's a whole nother system. When you look at our UCs, that's a whole nother system. And none of us necessarily work together, by the way. I know that might shock some of you. But when we're looking at how do we create data sharing agreements, it's between educational institutions, right? Finally, I just want to say one more thing, and it's not as much educational, but I was lucky enough to kind of be voluntold to be on the Workforce Development Board for the Orange County under Nancy, my director's sitting there. And as I got to get, about 5 years ago, as I got to get into that work, that was another opportunity where I saw education could really merge with our workforce development boards, our WIBs, however you want to call them, in our county. We have 3, Anaheim, Santa Ana, and the larger Orange County. And I feel like every single one of us should be aware that there's upskilling going on in those institutions, training and development. And I feel like it's one of the best kept secrets. So anyway, more to talk about how we merge systems, but going back to what Wallace said, I just feel like if we all work together, every intermediary and nonprofit that might be in this room, it is as imperative that you are with us in the educational realm as anything else. Because if we can build this ecosystem in Orange County even stronger, and I did get a quote from somebody up at the state of California saying that Sacramento and Orange County have done this the best so far, so we should be encouraged. But if we can keep doing this well and not look at each other as competition, but as partners, we're gonna get there.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna move on to Stephanie and talking about the middle skills pipeline. We heard about middle skills today, but there might be not enough understanding about what exactly is a middle skills job and what the potential is there. So how do you define a true middle skills job today, particularly in sectors where there is demand growing? And why is that important for students, parents, and employers in making decisions about career pathways?
Great question. So middle skills is kind of a term of art. It's something that we use in kind of a technical way. Most of us here are in education or workforce or maybe economic research. And so that's a term, it's a big umbrella term that was really kind of developed, in the early 2000s when there were kind of a bifurcation of low skill and high skill, and really thinking about middle skill as the increased technology. Now we see that accelerating so much with AI and other kinds of technologies. But middle skill, kind of as a term, is really not well understood or well utilized by kind of the, students, the parents, the communities. And so I think we need to do a better job of really helping, students, people coming up into education, of what those jobs are in terms of occupations and opportunities. So if you're thinking about that anchor sector, and thinking about healthcare, what are the types of occupations that exist there? There's things from diagnosis, from radiology technology to sonography, or there's direct patient care in terms of medical assisting, or there's other kinds of roles that you can play in the healthcare system, in administrative, medical assisting, or you might have a front of house, back of house kind of role. So those are the things that we really need to break down and I think help really address some of the equity issues to help get people on a pathway so they can start off maybe at a job that's going to earn them a median level salary, but also offer them a career path in terms of using that technology and using those technical skills that they gain through their education. So I think the clarification is really helping families, communities, students understand the breadth and scope of what encompasses a middle skill job and really getting a little bit more detailed about that. And so one of the things that we're doing at the community colleges through our strong workforce funding is really trying to broaden that understanding of what these middle skill jobs are and providing tools. One tool that we've developed is kind of a 24/7 access to a career center. It's called OC Works, and there you can find all of the information about occupations and break it down by what are the earnings, both at entry, median, and high level. You can find out what the growth is in terms of those jobs over the next decade. You can also find out the cost of living. There's a living wage calculator that can present that information of what the breakdown is in terms of food, housing, childcare. So these are all of the information that we really need to provide to make those kind of decisions. I think for most of us, we talk probably on a daily basis or a weekly basis about family, about children, about decisions, about what kind of job can you get and what are you going to make. Well, this is the information that we really need to have at hand and provide students, provide counselors access to that information that's really going to help with that decision making. So I think a key point here is to really provide that information around what these middle skill jobs are and provide that depth of content so that students understand what that decision path is.
Thank you. And Wallace alluded to, and in our conversations, you've mentioned a real sea change in how business and education have been collaborating. What can you share with us about what feels fundamentally different today than a decade ago?
Yeah, so that is, as Wallace pointed out, I think, the relationships and the partnerships have really advanced over the last decade. It's probably taken me that long to figure out what my job really is. And the job that I really determine now is to develop those partnerships. And it's a partnership where business and industry is not separate, but really a co-leader in developing our programs, providing opportunities for students, in terms of work-based learning. The report really highlights the excellent work that's taking place at K-12 and the data that's amazing, Kathy, that you all provided in terms of work-based learning is really eye-opening there. Another thing that we're really trying to do is think regionally. 10 years ago, I think it was pretty much the 9 community colleges and the School of Continuing Education really thinking separately, but now there's a whole branch of regional coordination, and even with K-12 through the growth of things like dual enrollment or working with our workforce board partners to really think about how do we get things like credit for prior learning and referrals into the community college system from the workforce. So the partnerships have been developed. We're developing even better ways to really communicate with industry around things like getting regional advisories into our colleges. So I think the decade has really been, an eye-opener, really some groundbreaking relationships, partnerships have developed. There's still a lot of work to do, but a key part of this is really developing the systems that are going to structure what we do for the best part of the next decade.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, Sue, even when the pipeline works, scale is the challenge. And that's where our nonprofit sector and partnerships matter most. So in terms of scaling work-based learning, there are so many companies taking interns and so many students who want the opportunity. What's one structural change, policy, funding, or partnerships that could dramatically expand work-based learning access without overburdening employers?
Thank you for that question. And thank you again for the panel and for the report. So thank you. Yeah, you know, every year we have more students who want to have an internship at a company than we have companies saying yes. And I think that's probably for all the nonprofits in the room. I'll see shake of hands. I think that that's something that we all run into. And so structurally, it'd be great to think that it was just, if I have a company of any type, that one of my parts about being part of this fabulous community is I'll take interns. I'll be part of the workforce learning for the community. And how do we make that kind of a systemic part of having a business here or being part of it? And for those of you that are CEOs or leaders of companies or on boards of companies, sometimes that needs to start at the top to say this is something that we believe in as an organization. Because we know sometimes it's hard. And also really for us as the intermediaries, the nonprofits, I think we can do a better job collaboratively of making it as easy as possible for companies. So I'd say companies saying yes, that'd be one thing. For us as the intermediaries to say, you know, here's the time of the intern program, and here's what you can expect, and here's what we'll prepare the students with, those soft skills. I look at April, we've talked about this from Vitalink, right? You know, these kind of things that make it so easy, because I feel like so many of our wonderful companies probably have different intermediaries or nonprofits knocking on their door, and they're trying to figure out which one do they say yes to and which one's not. So I think that collaboration of us is something that we're pretty passionate about. I see some heads nodding, so I think that makes sense. And one of my team members wrote it down as, and maybe this is in the report. The report is amazing, but it is a lot. But the idea of alignment, that we're all kind of aligned. Here's what we're talking about when we say interns. What does it mean? And that there's clarity of what the role is, of what the expectation from the business and what the expectation from the nonprofit is, so that we both have our common, and we make it easy. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions from the business side that this is going to be really hard. I have to dedicate a whole person, and it's 5 weeks of their life to take this person, this intern on. That maybe there's different rules that I have to do because maybe the student isn't quite 18 yet, and how am I going to do that? We can make that much simpler. We can make that commitment to the business communities much simpler. So I think there's two levels to that question, but we can do it. And I'll just say, because it's a magical thing, and I think many of you have seen it, but I think of one young woman who wasn't really that excited about going into an internship at one of the architectural firms, but the idea is every company has human resources, every company has marketing, every company is using AI, and so every company has IT, right? Even us as nonprofits, we have different aspects of these. And so going to any company, you can learn. So maybe it's not your first company, but you come in and she's like, wow. And I can remember 3 years later, because we've been doing this for, I think Sergio's in the room, over 10 years, working with Kathy and her amazing programs, the CTE, that she came back and called from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo that she's going to be an architect and she wants to come and work for them. And it was like this, wow, for this full circle. I remember a young man that interned at Edwards Life Sciences, and he's like, well, I really want to go into aerospace, but that's where we had the opportunity for him to go to, and he came out and just said, I'm going to be an engineer. I know at my heart I'm going to be an engineer. And these are two examples of people who had nobody in their life that had gone on to college or had a career like that, but they were just inspired. So I think as a community, we can inspire more too.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I want to thank our panelists for their insights and reflections. And also want to say hi to two new board members who joined us today, Paul Westhead and Tam Nguyen. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Been a great exploration. This report certainly provides us a clear map. It shows where the jobs are growing, where the pipelines are strong, but of course where gaps still exist. Orange County's workforce is not going to be built by accident. It will be built by design, as we've shared, and every person in this room has a role in that design. And so to that end, I want to invite everyone to transition to our breakout sessions. Before we close, I just wanted to ask if there were any key learnings or opportunities or next steps that were identified that you want to make sure to share with the group before we close out.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ana Ursua. I work with Cooperación Santana. We support worker owners, or employee ownership in small businesses. I was really inspired in the childcare breakout room because I feel like we talked about, how it's an everybody issue, how we need to build the will. And it really lifted up how, in addition to preparing to fit into the economy and prepare for the future of the economy, we also have to think about what needs to change in our economy in order to better, work for us and for all boats to be lifted. So that's something that I'm also taking away is, yes, how do we prepare and still seek that transformation that we need? So,
wonderful. Thank you, Ana. Any other last comments or reflections? Well, great. Well, certainly invite folks to connect and follow up. And again, as part of our OCCF Vision 2030 commitment, this report is intended to guide our future investments in advancing economic opportunity in Orange County. And we look forward to partnering with our funders, educators, workforce professionals, business leaders, and policymakers to strengthen and align our educational talent pipeline to meet future talent demand. This report is just the beginning of that. And so to all of your comments and suggestions about ways that we can continue this conversation, we're working, I think our marketing team is working on a follow-up where we want to ask you, what is it that you're doing today that is aligned with the report findings and recommendations? And how can we as the community foundation, as well as with our partners in philanthropy and business and policy and education, align better with you so that we can be advancing the work that you're doing collectively in Orange County? And I love even some of the ideas that came out today of how do we work better together, work smarter in how we align our resources for engaging employers, for pipelines for internships and apprenticeships. There's so many ways that we could be advancing collaboration that enhances all of our collective work together. And again, just want to thank our panelists and our partners today, Sue with United Way, Kathy from Orange County Department of Education, Stephanie Fager from Coast Community College, and Kim Gall from First 5 Orange County, as well as, of course, Dr. Wallace Walrod with all of his amazing insights and knowledge. So thank you all for today.